Gentlemen, I know you have long desired for a piece of evidence to objectively and empirically measure and quantify the benefits of this very ancient practice. Here I have a study from the Journal of Addiction Science. A period of abstinence from masturbation and pornography leads to lower fatigue and various other benefits. A quantitative study. Now, I have read through the study before I recorded this video. I've made some notes on the side because, of course, reading a journal like this poses the risk of monotony, I will say. So I have done my best to try and, it's gone there. I've done my best to kind of put the cliff notes and the most important pieces of information on the right-hand side. Strap in, this is going to be a longer form video. And we'll waste no time. We'll just get right through it. I will say, though, that there are some pros and cons of this particular study. I've tried to be as objective and rational and logical and masculine as I can in respects to my particular passing out of some of the information. But again, I'll waste no time. So the introduction, the study opens by spotlighting the rise of online abstinence movements from NoFap, Reboot Nation, Reddit communities. I'm sure you're very familiar, which have grown massively over the past decade, which in my estimation has been a reflex and reaction from some of the very neurotic and degenerate symptoms that men can experience as a consequence of PMO. So, members of these community, including myself and many of yourselves as well, have anecdotally reported a whole buffet of psychological and physical benefits like reduced depression, shyness, clearer thinking, higher motivation, reduced fatigue, increased self-control, and a stronger desire for life. I will just mention a brief sidestep caveat here that I do believe that anecdotally, that should be as much evidence as a lot of you may personally need. I know for myself, when I practiced this, that my life improved tenfold, 20-fold, not just in terms of, well, I suppose I can't say anything in regards to quantity of life, but certainly quality of life has improved, including all of these that have been mentioned here. But again, if you want a little bit more scientific rationale, we can explore this particular study. So the researchers argue that abstinence may influence neurological reward pathways. We've talked about this ad nauseum, since online pornography acts as a supranormal stimulus that floods the brain with dopamine and novel stimuli. The evidence shows that novel sexual material boosts arousal and dopamine. Heavy adult material use has been correlated with structural and functional differences in the brain's reward systems and prefrontal cortex. And these would be areas tied to fatigue, mood regulation, impulse control, and motivation, which tie very nicely to some of the benefits that we see when we are not abusing ourselves in this particular arena. Abstinence in other domains like fasting or substance withdrawals can lead to improvements in fatigue, clarity, arousal, cycles, mood, and also motivation. So the psychological literature also ties high pornographic use to issues like anxiety, depression, low energy, reduced motivation, and impaired focus, which mirror the benefits claimed by abstinence communities. So I just want to speak directly to you. One of the, when this topic gets brought up, particularly in my personal life, maybe when I have to share this with a partner, or maybe I meet somebody new and the subject gets onto my work and some of the things that I talk about, this comes up. A lot of people poo-poo it. They say, there's no scientific rationality to it. Why would you consider doing this? My first initial response is that this is just a variation of fasting. SR is just a form of fasting. And fasting's main mechanics is not, autophagy is one, but the main symptom, or system I should say, is the process of hormesis. And I spoke about this before. Hormesis is a word that describes a process whereby you voluntarily introduce a stressor to the body in the hopes that it accrues a beneficial biological response. Not eating for 24 hours is stressful for the body, mildly stressful. Okay, that's the key with hormesis. It has to be a mild stressor. If the stressor is too much, you don't eat for 100 days, you die. But if the stressor is mild, the body will accrue an adaptation, a biological adaptation. In the same way, when we fast or refrain or go through a period of sexual abstinence, it mildly stresses the body in attempts to accrue a beneficial biological response. And when I frame it in that context, it seems more palatable, it seems more passable, it makes more sense. And that's always the first way I go to it, because the first way I describe it, because I want to be very rational, I want to be very logical, because I'm a firm believer, not even a believer, I know for a fact that your life improves when you adapt and apply different variations of hormesis in the forms of fasting, in the forms of SR. Even cold showers are a form of hormesis. You introduce a mild stressor. The cold will kill you long-term exposure, but again, the key is mild stressor accrues a beneficial biological response. So far, the science is sound. It is very sound. It's very difficult to argue here. So just a brief summary. The intro says there's a huge movement claiming that this helps. There's some scattered science hinting it might. No one has tested properly, so we're going to do this. And just a quick one, again, I'll just go, because I want to make sure that I'm sharing love to the study. If you want to see this, I'm just going to put this on screen here. You can have a look yourself and go, oh, don't know what's happened there. You can go through it and, you can do your own research. But, if you trust me, if I have your consent, I'll continue on with the methodology. So let's talk about study design. It was a 3-week experimental study comparing an abstinence group and a control group. So experimental group, e.g., control group, c.g. No clinical diagnosis included. It focused on non-clinical young men, abstinence from porn and masturbation, abbreviated APMS. So the sample study was initially 62, but they boiled it down to 21 on the preface that they were abstaining from pornography and masturbation. And then a secondary group, which included full abstinence with no partnered sex as well. And the control group was 24. So the inclusion criteria was men only, of course, not in an established sexual relationship. And for the experimental group must be fully abstinent from masturbation and pornography during the 3 weeks. The individuals were excluded if habitual use of PMO was very, very low. Now, the first reaction I had when I read this, and the thought I always have when people ask me, Joseph, are there any studies on this, is how on earth do you control that? How do you know for a fact that these 21 men in total are abstaining? Are they living in a compound? Are they living in the lab? I don't know. I guess you just have to take their word for it. So, that for me is where the cracks in the study start to come in, because you can imagine how complex it would be to control that particular variable. Now, the recruitment was via social media, personal contact, university mailing list. The control group was blinded, so they were told that this was about personality changes, but the experimental group was not blinded. Obviously, it's very difficult to control abstinence if you're not telling people that you have to be celibate. Again, this is more cracks in the study, because the placebo effect then is very, very heavy. If the experimental group is told this is what we're measuring, their personal bias is going to come into play there. So difficulties. Procedure. So all participants completed identical questionnaires. Experimental group additionally reported baseline pornographic use, masturbation frequency, emotional shame. 3 weeks complete abstinence. Control group continues normal life. And the follow-up with the same battery of questions. Okay, so again, I'm trying to be as objective as possible. Questionnaires used. My feelings is that they're not measuring something objective here. They're measuring something subjective. So, how I would describe my emotions is going to be very, very personal to me, as opposed to everybody in the experimental group. But these were some of the metrics that they measured: self-control, shyness, mental fatigue, physiological fatigue, depressiveness, positive feelings, motivation, effort, etc., etc. So let's skip on. And again, I did mention there, that's the weakness of the self-reported data. The results. So the finding from the 3-week abstinence experiment, it showed clear measurable physiological and behavioral changes. Now, these have been ranked from strong, medium, performance implications as well. So we'll begin with the most substantial ones. Individuals in the experimental group showed that they had the largest measured changes in the entire study, stronger effects in men who also abstained from sex as well, so fully abstinent, and significant difference in the control group. So the mental fatigue went low and their physical fatigue also went down. So more mentally sharp, more physically energetic. Medium effects: better wakefulness, higher baseline alertness, reduced tiredness throughout the day, more movement, less lethargy. Performance implications: noticeable energy effect, positive athletic performance boost, stronger focus and productivity, potential relevance for reducing lethargy, fatigue, and social anxiety. Medium effects also for mood and behavior, more motivated. Subjects reported increased inner spark, better impulse regulations, fewer distractions from urges, shyness goes down, felt more relaxed in regards to others. So essentially the conclusions of the study were that short-term abstinence increases energy, resilience, drive, social ease, and control, consistent to medium strong effects across all domains. So I'm still a little bit iffy in regards to the validity or the value or how controlled the study was. You can see the cracks here. Again, I'm not an ideologue. I'm not going to get on camera and tell you that I think this is a really, really good study, because I don't think it really is. But kudos for them for trying to control this. I've always, as I mentioned before, had the opinion that a study is going to be very, very difficult, because the control metrics are so complicated in this respect. But again, credit for them for trying and giving us some value here. I implore you to read the study yourselves if you're interested. But I don't know, what do you think, guys? I think this is at least moving in the right direction in respects to its popularity, and people are actually serious and putting in the work to try and give us some valuable data and empirical and objective evidence to give us the proof in the pudding that this isn't just an online fad, and this is something that actually will have a quantifiable difference in your life. But if you've been through Sexual Energy Mastery, if you're part of our Discord, if you've watched some of my videos and practiced yourself and seen from yourself, like I said before, you don't need this to validate how much of an impact this will have in your life. And I'm sure there'll be very many comments below that will tell you as much. But I don't know, gents. Are these theories? Are these facts? I don't know. You tell me. Speak soon.